Greetings and salutations, my fellow Skywatchers from all corners of the globe. We're back live on air once again on this beautiful June 4th, 2014. And could be June 3rd, wherever you're listening in. Might be June 3rd for some of you. So welcome. We're broadcasting live from New Logic Studios in Miami, Florida. I'm Angel, and that's Alan over there. Alan, say hi to the crowd.
Hi, crowd.
There we go. From a remote location. Joining us this week, we have our very own special UFO Digest news correspondent himself, Mr. Robert Morningstar. Robert, welcome to Skywatchers once again, my friend.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
It's going to be a fun show tonight, folks. We have a returning guest who was on here with us a few weeks ago. Mr. Lance Burton is going to be with us at, a little bit later on the show. And, man, he was a blast to have him on. And, Alan, I know you missed that show. And, now you get a crack at asking him.
Sorry, go ahead.
Now you get your chance at asking him some questions. You get your crack at him. Great interview, man. We had Joseph Mero was on with us when we had him on.
Really? Well, unfortunately, I missed it. And, I'm a little bit upset about it personally. But... technical difficulties, technical glitches, it's all my fault. Blame it on me.
It is. And if you have any hate mail, please send it to info@ihatealan.com. And for everybody who might not remember who Lance Burton is, he is the author of the book Blood of a God. And, again, he's going to be with us in about 30 minutes. And I look forward to having him on periodically, man. He's a really, really cool guest. But you know what? Right now we have a very special topic we want to bring to you guys. We have Robert Morningstar on the line, who is joining us for pretty much probably the entirety of the show. But early on, we wanted to bring up a subject that he emailed me on this past week. Robert, tell the folks exactly what this email is about, because I don't want to spoil what you've got to say.
Okay. Basically, it's an announcement of a conference that I'm going to be speaking at in California. It's going to be my first trip to California since 1992, and it's for a very good reason. There's a conference called the Secret Space Program and Breakaway Civilization Conference that will be addressed by Catherine Austin Fitz, Mark McCandless, Richard Dolan, Joseph Farrell, Michael Schratt, Michael Tellinger, and myself, and perhaps some others. And the subject is the secret space program and where did all the money go and what was done with it, basically. And my contribution to this program will be something that we've labeled The Truth is Seamless. And it's about the real space program, and it was really discovered by Apollo and has been hidden in archives for 50 years. I will be showing the most important Apollo photographs ever taken, and they show artificial structures on the far side of the moon, but more importantly, they show a presence in space, a permanent presence in space on the far side of the moon. And by that I mean Apollo captured photographs of at least 3 space stations and a space fleet that's parked on the dark side of the moon, as they used to call it in the old days when we didn't know what it looked like.
Now, is that ours from the Solar Warning program, or is that from someone else's program, or someone not local?
It's not local. I think it's lunar. I think that...
No, when I say local, I mean from this,
No, I don't. No. I've been talking to my friends about this and how we've all heard about these rumors about giant towers on the moon and structures, and they're actually there. But for me, I tell you, the shock of my life came in discovering these photographs and going one after another as the metric camera was taking photos and studying the sky and all of this. But I was really looking for something specifically in the sky. And if you really want to know what I was looking for, you can find it on my Facebook page. It's the main photograph of something I call the Sentinel. And it's a huge space station is the best word for it. But it's not the only one. I was looking for one, and I found at least 3. And they are the most remarkable looking spaceships that I could ever imagine. They don't look all the same. One of them, in fact, looks like the Starship Enterprise, but without the the round flying saucer section.
Wow.
Another one, the most stunning one, I'll just describe it as the gear. And I can't imagine a more efficient design for a space station than this gear that I'm going to describe to you. Imagine a gigantic gear with the gear teeth on the outside, and on the inner ring, the teeth of a gear facing inwardly. Like an airport has the terminals to receive the aircraft. Some of them you see are circular in form or semicircular around a terminal. This is what's in outer space.
All right, you've got my attention with that. Absolutely.
So I'm inviting everyone who's listening who can be in California, June 26th, 27th, and 28th in San Mateo at the Redwood Hall at the San Mateo Expo Center, Expo Hall. And you can find information about it on www.secretspaceprogram.org. And that's enough of a tease. Angel has the photographs, and I hope that he will post them.
Well, yeah, let's talk about some of these photographs, because I did just post them on our Skywatchers Facebook page. So anybody listening in who wants to take a look at what we're going to talk about, please go to facebook.com/Skywatchers Radio. And Robert, let's take a look at the first one here, the double dome hangars on the moon. Describe to the audience what we're looking at here. We'll go through each picture one by one.
Okay, that sequence that you see there is a composite of two photographs of the same objects that were photographed by Apollo 17. These objects, these mounds, are in the Mare Crisium, and in a region of utter flatness. Not the Mare Crisium, excuse me, the Mare Imbrium. The Mare Imbrium is a practically flat mare that has these promontory peaks that jump out of the ground, out of the surface of the moon. But these mounds are really unusual. They are the only rounded structures or forms in the area, and they were so interesting to the Apollo astronaut who was in command of the Apollo 17 that he actually veered the spacecraft south and southwest to be able to keep it in the camera frame for 4 pictures. So this is not, an error in photography or an optical illusion. It's one of 4 photographs taken by Apollo 17, which piqued my curiosity. As this was back in 1998, I discovered these photographs, and the crater, the reference crater, was erroneously labeled Euler, and in other photos of the region on the NASA website, it's labeled Pythias. And I got into a concept of argument with somebody via internet about the accuracy of my description. I was calling it Euler because that was the first label that NASA had put on it. But later, both of us turned out to be wrong. He argued that it was Pythias and Copernicus, and I found maps of the actual Apollo 17 lunar charts used by the astronauts. And I was able to prove that this crater is called Delisle. The big crater is Delisle. And the proof is in the upper left quadrant of that photo, where you see 2 craters approximately of the same size. But if you look at the northernmost one, that crater has another minor impact crater on its rim, which is kind of like a fingerprint for a crater. And that identifies it as crater Heiss. So I am correcting NASA on their labeling of this photograph at their Lunar Planetary Institute website. And it's actually the University of Arizona that catalogs these things, so I'm going to write a letter to the University of Arizona and ask them to correct that, because it caused a lot of confusion for a long time. So this...
Oh, we lost Robert there. Let's try to get him back on the line here.
Hello, this is Robert Morningstar. Thank you for calling. Please leave your name.
Oh, well, we lost Robert Morningstar. His connection is a little weird there, but hopefully we can get him back on the line here in a couple seconds. Guys, again, go to Skywatchers radio.com.
Okay, and you lost me too. Gee, thanks.
Yeah, your internet was cutting out there also.
Oh, it's my fault. So you lost both people, but it's both people's fault.
Yeah, it is.
Sure, yeah. I'm not going to argue with you in that one.
But let's get him back on the line here.
Hello.
Oh, there you go, Robert.
Yep, thank you. It's
sorry about that.
becoming a regular happening. The last time I was discussing this subject on another radio program, we got cut off 4 times, which was a record.
Oh man, we definitely got to get that Skype going for you for.
Yeah, I think it's the powers that be that were just screwing around. They don't want this information out there, so they're the ones who's goofing this up.
Yeah, I have no doubt about it. Look, about 2 years ago, if anybody said that the Big Brother was listening to us, everybody would scoff and say it was conspiracy theory. And thank God that Mr. Snowden had the courage to out that conspiracy.
No
Conspiracies
kidding.
do exist, and the word conspiracy exists because the act existed before the word was coined, you know? And I think we have to take these things seriously. There is a conspiracy against the American people going on right now, and suppressing the information that I'm talking about right now is part of it. They want to keep our brains and our minds in a box that they control. So you can see my tone has changed a little bit right now because of this. I'm getting a little tired of it. And but it won't work because I'm still here, and I'm going to still tell you that the Apollo astronauts took photographs of the most incredible craft imaginable, and this is as early as 1968 with the first lunar orbit by Apollo 8. They were taking photographs then, and they knew what was there. And I was on a radio show, and somebody said to me, "What question do you want me to ask you?" And I said, "Why don't you ask me on the air if I believe in Santa Claus?" My friend didn't ask me the question, but I'll tell you the answer. I stopped believing in Santa Claus when I was 10 years old. But then when Apollo 8 went around the moon at Christmas time, I believed in Santa Claus again because Frank Borman said, Houston, Apollo 8, please be advised that there is a Santa Claus.
Well, you know that's code word for something else.
You want to hear the other code word that NASA has for UFOs that were buzzing the Apollo astronauts? They've got films of them and photos of them, but in order to, they always ridicule a serious subject. They play it down, they tone it down by giving it a silly name. So
welcome to the world of conspiracies.
Yeah, well, you know what the name is, the code word NASA had for UFOs around the moon? Moon pigeons.
Moon pigeons? That's funny.
Yeah,
let's talk about this other picture you sent us also, the lunar tower picture. This kind of looks like a lunar pigeon, man. This is enlargement of towers shown above. Talk about this picture here real quick.
Right.
Tell us what we're looking at.
One of the most interesting things for me is to study old photographs from the Luna and Zond Russian probes that went early on in the 60s to photograph the moon, and in particular the far side of the moon, as well as the lunar orbiter photographs, because these were real photographs that were beamed back by television back to Earth. And they were in improving quality. The first were really raw, dark images. You could hardly make out anything. But nobody would imagined in 1968 or 65 or even 76 that we would have the technology that we have now in photographic enhancement.
Yeah, so I just want one of those NASA spy cameras that are up there watching us but
you know what? What they show us of the moon is degraded. The modern stuff, I can tell you from my study of the planet Mars. I saw Mars in 2003 through 128x superplausible lens as it came closest to the Earth in 60,000 years. And I saw a living, breathing, dynamic planet with atmosphere, lightning, clouds, volcanoes, and incredibly deep asteroid impact craters. And the next day, when I saw the photograph that NASA put out of what I was supposed to have seen last night, I said to myself, what? That's a cartoon. The atmosphere had been stripped away, the air glow had been stripped away, and basically it was a rendering, like a computer drawing. There was nothing in that photograph of August 28th, 2003, that was supposedly a Hubble Space Telescope photo. It had no bearing and nothing in common with what was really there the night before.
Really?
I saw for 3 nights. And again this year, I made a point of getting up there on April 9th at its closest approach with 2 good telescopes and a digital camera to take a picture of something called the Eye of Mars, an asteroid impact crater that destroyed the Martian ecosystem in one day. This impact is so deep that the sunlight does not reach the bottom of this pit until 11 or 10:30, 11 in the morning, and as it sets, it starts to appear at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And yet, it's been seen for over 100 years. It's been named the Eye of Mars by Percival Lowell, and NASA has never shown a real photograph of it to the world. And I got up with my own telescopes, and I was able to get one good digital photo, grainy and fuzzy as it may be, but it's it, and it's recognizable, and it's posted on Red Ice Radio. Hate to give away the competition, but they're really a really good group of people who are sponsoring this conference. So I know that firsthand. Who am I going to believe? As Mr. Callahan of the FAA said in Washington regarding the UFO that tracked the 747 across Alaska, he said, excuse me, who are you going to believe, the government or your lying eyes? Well, I believe my lying eyes. And honestly, how can we take the government seriously when it lies to the public at every juncture?
Oh, I'm sorry. Were we supposed to take them seriously at this point?
Last time I checked, we weren't really taking them.
Wait a minute.
seriously
I think that's a whole nother show.
Whole different show.
You know, I think we should actually add that into the PSN radio network.
Maybe.
I don't believe the government.
That's a whole different show altogether. I mean, that could be a different time slot, different format, different host, and it'd be a lot of fun just to
we'll just call
how much we don't believe it.
No, we'll
here's another thing.
Hell.
Here's another thing about that bothers me is that all of this information belongs to the American people because the American people paid for it. That's another thing.
That's the worst part, isn't it?
It doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to you and to me and to everyone who's listening. It belongs to the world. We didn't go there in the name of one country, supposedly. You know, we went there supposedly for mankind, and yet they've been hiding the facts from mankind.
Robert, now let's get to the next picture here real quick, because we're almost out of time. We got to go on break in a little bit. The Hiroshima on the moon. Tell us about this one real quick.
Someone leaked a video of a low flyby by the Chinese moon probe. It was prior to the Chang'e lander. The Chinese did extensive studies of the moon in a high-resolution video, and a strip of it was leaked to me. And as I was watching this video, I was stunned, because what I feel I have in that photograph, that I shot off the screen, by the way, that's a photograph shot off my high-resolution monitor. But it's enough to show you the infrastructure that remains in an area that I call a huge blast zone. There are columns of apparently equal height and equal diameter. There are columns that are arced, others that are ringed. There are standing walls with windows in them, apparent openings. Okay, I'll call them a window because that's what we call them on Earth. On the moon we call them something else. So there is recognizable infrastructure, collapsed buildings, half-crashed domes. But dare I say streets.
Now, hold on. What part of the moon is this picture taken? Is it like on the dark side also of the moon?
It's a very good question. It took me 3 months of studying this snippet of video to be able to get enough information from certain craters that are shown for very short periods of time. But after about 3 months of studying it, I can tell you that it's on the far side of the moon near the crater Tsiolkovsky. Tsiolkovsky is spelled with a T, and that was the premier Russian rocket scientist of the early Soviet rocket era. He would correspond historically to Robert Goddard. Robert Goddard was trying to get rockets launched back in the 1920s. Tsiolkovsky was doing that in Russia. And so the crater is named after him. And it's a unique crater on the far side of the moon because it's a rather large one and extensive, and one of the few that really has a semblance of a mare inside it, like a flat region with a huge peak coming out of it. I would call it almost looks like an island in the center of it. And as a result of the unique structure of that central island in this glimpse of a crater that I see in this video, I can tell you that this Hiroshima on the moon is near the crater Tsiolkovsky.
So if anybody with a ground-based telescope wants to take close-up shots or wants to try to look at this thing, will they be able to do it?
No, they'd have to take a hike to the other side of the moon because it's the far side. Yeah, the moon is remarkable. It always keeps the same face to us. It's locked in a tidal lock with us. And it's not that it doesn't spin. The moon does spin, but it spins in relationship to the sun. See?
Right, so it always lands on the same spot.
Well, but here's the question. Does any other moon in the solar system act the same way?
Act the same way in tidal lock? Yeah. I would have to say that the moon Io of Jupiter is in tidal lock with Jupiter. And
so it doesn't rotate at all on its own axis? Pardon
me?
It doesn't rotate on its own axis at all.
I believe it cannot because Jupiter is so powerful that it does not permit that a thing so close to rotate. But what is interesting about Io is that it's got a permanent flux tube of plasma. Electromagnetic plasma flows from Io down into Jupiter as it orbits around it. I don't know about the spin of other moons. I'm sure that Titan has a good spin. Titan, a moon of Saturn, is the most Earth-like, topographically speaking. When they went with Huygens under the clouds, they saw terrain that is most reminiscent of planet Earth, mountains and seas, oceans, except that the oceans are full of liquid methane, and no human could live there. But interestingly enough, a 1948-49 Air Force intelligence assessment claimed that they had asked major astronomy observatories and astronomers to try to track the UFO fleets that were seen coming into orbit and taking orbit around the equator. And they reported back that they followed these fleets using the telescopes. For example, Harvard was a really advanced telescopic center then, and they reported that they followed the UFO fleets to Titan.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with the ring makers of Saturn?
Yeah. Saturn was once a sun. It was for a short time in the early history of the solar system. Saturn and Jupiter were both glowing like suns, but they didn't kick into that permanent fusion stage and died down. And at that time, imagine Saturn as a sun with 11 moons around it would be a minor solar system in itself.
Yeah, but wait a minute, hold on. I got to interrupt you here because that doesn't sound right. I mean, statistically, most solar systems are binary star systems.
Right.
Now, you're telling me that there were 3 in our...
That's not unheard of, though. That's not unheard of.
Yeah.
Well, no, but Alan, though, technically, there's really not three because one didn't ignite to become a star.
Apparently, two of them didn't. Does that mean there's still another star out there that we?
Well, this is where the legend of Nemesis, the legend of the Anunnaki, all that stuff comes from. What could possibly be a binary star?
Most recently, there was an announcement that NASA had discovered a brown dwarf beyond the Oort cloud that is our twin. The dark twin has been found.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it came out about...
But it's not going to hit us anytime soon, folks, so don't worry.
3 or 4 months ago. It's so far away. Don't worry, it's not Nibiru.
Now, Robert, real quick, did you see the email that I sent you? Did you see the Mona Lisa UFO or the alien? Because they're even asking about it in the chat room here. They want to know if you know anything about the Apollo 20 mission.
Yeah, you know what I think? I think the Apollo 20 mission is a cover story to reveal something that was really done by the earlier missions. That's what I really think.
Now that video is interesting because in that video, in parts of it, you could actually see one of the astronauts' face as he's messing with the camera, and then they pan down to the alien laying on the flatbed, which looks very, very real, man. I mean, that whole sequence looks like it's one shot.
Let me tell you something. I found a very, very unusual photograph. It was a thumbnail, and it was purportedly a photo of something that they loaded on Apollo 14. And when I looked at it, I said to myself, man, I've never seen anything that looked more like a mummy in a plaster cast than that thing. The shape of whatever it was on the table, if you want to call it that, had a form that was almost humanoid, but if a humanoid had been packed in plaster for preservation or something like that. That was the impression I got. Now, the Apollo 20 story, I believe the photographs, the one about the crashed spaceship? It was actually taken by Apollo 12.
Wow, okay.
That photograph is real. But it wasn't taken by Apollo 20. It was actually taken by Apollo 12. And not one.
Interesting.
There are 4 photographs of that object in the stereo pairs. So they had stereo cameras, 3D cameras of shooting, and they came around and shot that thing twice. Some people are saying, it's just light and shadow, and they try to prove by showing you grainy photographs of the ground. And they actually believe NASA when they zoom in. You zoom in, you see the ship, you zoom in, you see the ship bigger, you zoom in, you see the ship bigger. And all of a sudden you see like something that looks like the bottom of a sand pit, and they said that was what you were confusing for a spaceship. I mean, it really takes a lot of gall to insult people's intelligence like that. One of the most interesting things I ever saw was a program on the History Channel about life on Mars, and they were interviewing all these NASA scientists, and I can't tell you how many times, at least 3 times, different scientists said the same NASA joke. The question isn't whether there is intelligent life on Mars. The question here is whether there's intelligent life on Earth. And they'd all do their giggle. Well, I find that very insulting, and it shows you what they think of themselves and what they think of us. It's very condescending.
And sadly, almost kind of accurate. Really.
Well, in regard to the sheep,
in some parts of the Earth, let's just say that intelligent life has yet to be found.
I mentioned the Chinese satellite, right? And the name Chang'e or Chang'o. The real name is Chang'e in Chinese. And people don't know who Chang'e is. Chang'e was a Chinese princess that in legend was abducted and taken to the moon by a 6-foot-tall gray rabbit.
Wow, that's incredible.
Now let me tell you something equally incredible.
That's a heck of a lucky rabbit's foot.
All right, let me tell you something equally incredible. On the way to the moon, Apollo 11 received a message from Houston relating to them this story and saying to them, by the way, we'd like you to keep your eye out for a Chinese princess. Her name is Chang'e. She was kidnapped and taken to the moon by 6-foot. That's where I got the story. It's in the Apollo radio transmissions. That they told the Apollo
I'm gonna have to like check that story out. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah,
But listen, we're a little bit short on time, and I actually wanted to get to one more thing here before we go on break, and get Lance Burton on the line with us. Alan here had an article that he sent to me from dcresource.com. I linked it also to you, Robert. I don't know if you saw it on the email there, but Alan, let's tell the audience what we're going to look at here for a second. I'm going to post this on our Facebook page again, facebook.com/Skywatchers Radio. Now, since you are the one who discovered this image, Alan, tell the audience what exactly we're going to be looking at here.
All right. Well, what I was doing earlier this week was obviously hitting good friend Alejandro's website, which, of course, if you guys don't know, is Open Minds. And he was talking about, and there was an article about this UFO that got recorded over London on an airplane. Now, I knew that shape looked very familiar to me, and it's not your normal shape or traditional shapes of the UFOs that people normally capture photos of or claims of, because it was more boxy and squarish type. And I thought back to myself, where have I seen something similar to that? And it turns out that I had found this before I really got into the ufology scene. I had actually found this on a website in 2007, which was reviewing the camera that I had just bought for ghost hunting. So what we're going to be looking at is a couple of the images. Did you post the link, or did you post the link directly to the actual photos?
I posted both. The actual photo is there, and the link to where you could see the entire article is there also. So if you guys want to follow along to what we're talking about, you could do both. Okay.
If you guys scroll down, if you hit the link to the actual webpage, scroll down. It's about 60% down the page. You're going to see a Mickey Mouse there, and then some photos of a skyline that this guy had taken a photo of. What I found interesting in the first shot, which doesn't have a ISO labeling of what speed photo he took it at, you're going to notice in, I'd probably say, about 40% in from the right-hand side, a curiously interesting round, pointy-looking UFO that is literally floating in the air above the buildings. And it's really, really well shot. I don't think anyone that's listening or watching this can say that that's anything but it. But
now you're talking about the one with the two little red dots on it, or the other one?
What do you mean? No, I'm not even that. I'm not there yet.
Okay, you're talking about the first one. Okay, gotcha.
I'm talking about the first.
I can tell you that city is New York City.
Yep.
I don't believe so, and I'll tell you why.
No, I can tell you. I know why. Well, there are two photographs, and
I mean that does look like the 17th Street Pier.
The first photograph is without a doubt New York City, and I can tell you exactly what you're looking at. Okay. You're looking at the South Street Seaport, and you see that long.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
I just want to identify the city, and that's the Empire State Building on the far right. Now,
I'm sorry. I disagree. There's no way in hell that lighted conical structure is part of the Empire State Building. It's not.
Is that what you're saying is UFO?
I'm sorry?
Is the image... Do they say on the image on the website where they took the image?
Hang on one second. I think he did. I think he's from the...
Because that would just settle that
I think he's from the Chicago area.
Oh, brother. It's the guy who... Are you talking about the one under Mickey Mouse?
Yeah.
Yes, right under Mickey Mouse.
I'm going to tell you, I sailed these waters for the last 12 years, and that is New York City.
Okay, so, and you're telling me that building over there, so close to the South Street
guys, hold on. That's irrelevant.
It's
irrelevant. The image is what's important and what's on it. Is what we're talking about.
Yeah, what's on it? That's where I'm going for. The image on the far right. I see something in the air in the middle of there. But if we're talking about the far right of the photograph.
Well, no, I said 40% in from the right.
Remember,
okay.
yeah.
I see that white object flying up there. Yeah, it's a very bright object. It's very large.
If you click on the picture, it'll open up the picture, and you can zoom into it, and you can actually see what it looks like in zoom. It looks interesting. You know what it kind of reminds me of? Remember the portraits they were drawn like a baby Jesus, and in the background was like a little UFO type of thing?
Oh, with the guy inside the ship going across?
Right. That's kind of what it reminds me of a little bit. Or something like out of the Jetsons, like the way the Jetsons cars, you know?
It's a kind of a slightly golden color. You're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I may be able to bring this up more.
I'm thinking, Alan, this is nothing more than a balloon, like a Goodyear balloon type of thing, just on at a funny angle.
If you think so, then I'm going to challenge you to go to the next picture that I want to point out, which is titled Night Shot 100. That's below that photo. 2 photos below that photo.
Right.
Okay.
And you're going to see something that really, go ahead and explain that one to me.
Yeah, that's one. It looks like the magic carpet flying in the sky with the 2 little red dots on it. Yeah,
but some of the red dots are there's glowing there. There's more to it than that in the night shot photo there. I mean, you can't just dismiss that one.
No, it's definitely interesting.
1600?
I'm sorry?
You mean the one that says ISO 1600, ISO 800? It's like a 4-panel?
No, the one that says ISO 100.
ISO 100, okay. And you see there's like a double image there of something that's red on the left side and blue on the right side.
Blue on the right side? Where are you looking?
I'm looking at the photo directly under the one we were just discussing that's New York City. And then there's 4 panels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think it's like the second panel down after the...
Yeah, the second panel down.
Yeah. You'll see like ISO 64, then ISO 100. That's the one
you ISO 100. Clearly.
Yeah, that's one. If you look at the left-hand side, the very top side, it looks like it's a magic carpet with 2 little red dots on it. At least that's what it looks like to me. It looks like a magic carpet. Anyway, joining us with Robert Morningstar, Alan, and myself is Mr. Lance Burton, the author of Blood of a God. And he's back with us for a Part 2 episode of Skywatchers Radio. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, man. It's good to be on with you again. It seems like it's been forever.
Feels like an eternity. Only a few weeks ago. Now, Lance, let's just jump into what we're talking about here. The audience that was here last a few weeks ago and heard you, I'm pretty sure, are fascinated by what we were talking about, and they want to get right back into that kind of conversation, and I'm sure we'll weave our way right back into that. But first, let's finish off what we were talking about here before the break. Now, were you listening into what we were discussing earlier?
I have a general concept of what's going on here. I was just looking at the pictures.
Okay, so let's go over these photos again. And by the way, if anybody wants to join us on the conversation and give us their 2 cents of what they think this is, and if they think this is in New York or somewhere else, and they could settle that debate, which got pretty heavy there for a second, please do so. Call in 786-245-8127, and also you can reach us on Skype by looking up PSN Radio. Now, Lance, what do you think these photos are? I mean, you saw both pictures. This is taken by a guy who reviews cameras. I mean, this is not like a UFO-related website. This is not like on, skywatchersradio.com or on Open Minds or anything like that. This is, just a regular website. I don't think the guy even knows that he has this, the guy who took these pictures. So.
Right, sure. Well, this is the first time I've seen him. I just looked at him just a moment ago when you sent him over to me. And I would say that the first one of the 2 is the most obvious. Right when I looked at it, it took less than a second to recognize what we were looking for. It wasn't hard to find. I think it clearly displays some sort of a traditionally, saucer-shaped craft of some kind. I haven't had a chance to do any technical review of the photo, but it looks legit to me.
Hey, I'm taking back my comment that it's New York City. I've just enhanced this photograph and brought up the brightness, and that's not the Empire State Building on the right. It actually
Uh-oh.
It looks more like the Transamerica building in San Francisco to me. I'm going to send it to you. Maybe you guys can, and I apologize for being so adamant. Maybe they built the South Street Seaport over there too. But I'll send it to you. The object above the tower on the right with the two bright red lights that you can see there? There's towers on the left and towers on the right with two bright red lights. That object has come into view much more clearly, and it is not... It's not an airliner, and there seems to be more to it than we were even seeing in that photo. I'm going to send it to you right away. I've just named it UFO over SF City, just assuming that it's a Transamerica building. Okay, so I'm going to email it to you, and you can take a look at it. But that object that Alan found is rather unusual.
Thank you.
Congratulations. You got a real UFO there.
That's a real good find, Alan. It really is.
Yep, good catch. Very good.
I'm emailing it.
And by the way, if someone actually takes a look at Night Shot 1600, it actually looks like you're seeing the back side of it shooting away into the skyline or into the distance.
Let's take a look at that one. You said it was 1600?
Yeah.
That would be ISO...
ISO 1600.
1600? Oh, okay, I see here. That's really blurry, though. I mean, that one's hard to tell.
I know. There's nothing in ISO 400, but there's also another anomaly in ISO 800. Now, I don't know if this is a shape-shifting whatever or not, or is this, just different angles?
This one I think I could identify.
What, ISO 16... Which one, ISO 800?
Yeah, 800. What we're looking at, you're looking at the very top image, right? It's I guess, left to center, all the way to the top?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an airplane.
Okay, I'll take that as an airplane.
Look at the wings. You can see the whole backside, the
you
front.
Can see the fuselage. All right, fine.
Everything. Yeah, that's an airplane.
All right.
Actually, it's amazing how clear you can tell that that's an airplane, considering it's kind of fuzzy.
You got to understand when the different ISOs the different ISOs are how long the iris stays open to capture light. That's why you can see it much clearer in the higher spectrum of ISOs.
Right.
Any camera person buff will, I'm sure, tell you all this.
Right. Well, I'm going to post that one also on our Facebook page if anybody wants to check it out. Again, it's facebook.com/Skywatchers Radio. So I think unanimous decision either way. It's a good image. It's a good set of images there, and intriguing as heck. I mean, we definitely got to get in contact with the person who posted these images and see if we can get him on the show. Maybe enlighten him to the fact that he has possible UFO-related stuff. He might not even know it.
Well, who said they enhanced it a little bit? Who just said they enhanced it a little bit?
Robert did.
Robert, did you email it off?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Angel, could you throw that to me when you have a chance?
Sure will. I will do just that.
What I'm going to do is enlarge that central area that we were looking at.
Now, are you calling that one Night Shot or Night Shot? Was that from Night Shot or Night Shot?
Yeah, Night Shot. I just called it UFO over SF City.
Okay, all right. Yeah, please pass that along. Actually, that might be an interesting thing to do on our show. We should take 20 minutes each week and have some photo editing that everybody who's listening can take part in or share along with. What do you guys think about that? And by the way, all of you who are listening, please feel free to comment on that thought or idea of doing that. I don't think any other talk show's doing that, are they?
And by the way, in the chat room, and I don't think anybody's doing that, but in the chat room they're saying, looks like a plane. People beat me up for posting airplanes, so I know what it is.
Okay, that's on the ISO. That's on the ISO 800. But what about the other? What about the other photos? That's what I want people to comment on.
I don't know. You know what? Here's another thing, though, and we got to keep this into perspective. When you're capturing, stuff in the night sky, a lot of times you're going to get stuff that either is a little bit blurry, a little bit out of focus. Sometimes an airplane or a balloon, like a Goodyear balloon or something like that, will look odd in some
Agreed.
pictures because you're capturing it in motion. So there is a good chance that maybe the one on the first one is possibly a Goodyear blimp. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like to me. Just at a funny angle and just captured weirdly. The one that I can't explain is the one with the two little red dots on it.
Yeah, but you also got to realize that the Goodyear blimps only fly on the East Coast in Los Angeles. So if it's not...
Well, it doesn't have to be a Goodyear blimp per se. I'm just saying
or
that kind of a
balloon,
thing. Right, some kind of hot air balloon, yeah.
Dude, this is in '07, and people were still high on 9/11.
Yeah, but do you think...
The air
hold on.
Jets coming after you.
Hold on. You're telling me that there's no way that there could be hot air balloons flying around or some kind of a Goodyear blimp type of thing flying around in this area promoting something. Come on, dude. There's stuff in Las Vegas all the time flying around promoting fights and all kinds of crap.
Yeah, but that's airplanes with something flying off their tail, not blimps.
No, not necessarily. Well, no, they have blimps with lights and all kinds of stuff all the time at events and whatnot.
And when was last time you were in
man.
Vegas?
Well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
All right, quick
exactly.
Quick say.
Now, let's move on, because as fascinating as these pictures are, we've taken way too much time talking about them, and we do have Lance on the line. Lance, last time you were on the show, man, we had just a blast having you on the show, so much so that we wanted to have you on as soon as possible, and here you are back again with us on Skywatchers Radio. And, last time we got into some deep discussion, but I want to give everybody the rundown again of your book who might not have heard that show. Tell the audience real quick about your book again, and then we'll pick up the discussion that we left off last time.
Okay, well, let me give you the and also, if I may, I want to just make one comment on this picture.
Oh, sure.
Because, I'm coming into the conversation a little bit late and only looked at a couple of the images. I think that in general, we have to take into account the fact that, now today, there are a lot of things flying around, right, in the sky, and even though I think that most of the people that are listening or on the show, we tend to be believers in a sense, right? We're all here partially because we think there's something going on, right? That's part of why the intrigue of being part of this show. There's something that's not as it seems, and so we already kind of agree with that. So I think we have to be extra diligent to ensure that we're not, jumping to conclusions. I think it's really important because we want to be legitimate when we make those conclusions. And my first inclination was, wow, that does look. It looks pretty legit. The first photo to me, without any enhancement or anything, definitely has the shape, the angles, the things you would expect out of the classic saucer-shaped craft, but I haven't analyzed it, right? So on the one hand you say, hey, looks good. On the other hand, I think that certainly scrutiny is important to ensure that we're not jumping to conclusions. Because I already believe that they're out there somewhere. It's whether it's on this photo or not is not necessarily the make or break it part of the story.
Guys, we're joined actually by a caller, 317. You're on the line on Skywatchers Radio. Welcome to the show. You have something to say about the images that we were talking about?
Well, I just wanted to make a quick comment about the
Sure.
gentleman that said the Goodyear blimp only flies on the East Coast.
Uh-oh.
I live in
Go ahead. Give it to
Indiana.
him.
I live in Indiana, and I go to Indy 500, and we have the Goodyear blimp every year.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. I stand corrected, and I cordially apologize.
That's all I got to contribute.
Thank you for that call. That's the best call of the year right there.
Thank you for putting me in my place. I feel so mortified. I'm going to sound sarcastic for the rest of the show.
Caller, real quick, do you have any idea where these images were taken? Because we're kind of debating that also. Well, some say New York, some say other parts of the country. What do you think?
I do not. I don't have any idea.
What do you think of the validity of these pictures? Do you think I'm going with kind of a blimp on that image? Do you think I'm kind of on the money, or do you think I'm way off base?
No, I think you're on the money. I think there is more blimps than just a Goodyear blimp, but
right. I use that as a general statement, kind of like so that people know what I'm talking about, basically. Goodyear blimp. That everybody kind of has an idea of what that looks like,
Right.
Yeah, it's a big old huge football floating through the air.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
With
now,
a
what do you think?
pointy thing on the end, yeah.
I just sent you an enlargement of that section, and it doesn't look to me like the Goodyear blimp. It's very unusual, and it
By the
certainly
way,
does.
I just
like
sent you a high-res version of that photo.
Oh, great!
It looks like a blimp to me, man. I still stick by that. It looks kind of like a funny angle at a blimp. Caller, thanks for calling in. Do you have any final thoughts or any questions for Robert or Lance or Alan or myself or for the world listening in?
Not at all, except for pay attention to No Agenda. Pay attention to No Agenda podcast.
There you go. We'll do that. Here, you want to give out your website real quick and get a free plug?
Oh, it's not mine. It's a podcast I listen to. No Agenda show. It's pretty right on. You guys are rocking too.
Rock on, brother. Thank you for calling. I appreciate your call, man. Keep listening and please call in the future again. We'd love to take your call again.
Will do.
Thank you. There you go. Good call.
All right.
I love any call that could put Alan in this place for a minute. That's awesome.
Hey, listen, if I'm wrong, I'm the first one to admit that I'm wrong. But if I know I'm right, or I think I'm right, I won't be as strong. But if I know for a fact, yeah, I'm pushing the edge there.
There you go. So now that we've settled that blimps do fly around on other parts of the country, not just in the East Coast, it could be that. I still say that the other one is the most intriguing of the two images.
Yeah, that's too flat and rectangular. No matter what angle you try and twist that ain't a plane.
Now, this is coming from our chief in charge, Keith Rowland himself, sent me a quick fast blast here saying, that's not an ISO. ISO is the gain of the image sensor. It says here, an aperture is the size of the opening. Shutter speed is how long the shutter is open.
I didn't take the photography class I was supposed to.
Yeah, and he speaks in cryptic language sometimes, so you gotta read that a couple times. Thank you, Keith.
ISO in the old days when we actually had film in the camera was a measure of the film sensitivity, and I think that's what Keith Rowland was pointing out. And I'd like to say hi to Keith. It's been many years since we worked on that original Enterprise mission website. So,
oh, yes.
Hello.
Oh, and that was a great website back then. I remember that agenda being pushed. That was a great thing.
Yep.
Indeed.
I wanted to ask Lance a question about his book, and I was reviewing your website and the interesting cast of characters, and I was wondering where you got the inspiration for this book.
Oh, man, that would take a whole show to get into that.
Well,
give us the short version.
Well, let me get back. Is there a basic fact to the story that you're relating? Because I have a feeling that there is.
Well, I'm going to try to do it briefly for you. I mean, first of all, I've always been a sci-fi fantasy fan, right? I mean, so, there's been a part of me that's wanted to write, a fun story of that kind, for some time now. And actually, 10 years ago, I began, I should say, a more fantasy-oriented version of this story. And, of course, this is pre-being married to my wife and pre-baby and the whole thing. And, back then I was on deployment in the Middle East, and I had a little bit of time on my hands and, whatever. So, I was just messing around with it. And it was more things like, Elven Ranger battalions and things like that was the flavor at that time. And just, work life and so forth just kind of didn't let it come together. So, fast forward, 10 years, and here we are. And I think that I've always felt that writing a fun military sci-fi story would help fill a gap for, readers out there. Because, look, I'm a reader. I think most of us that are into this stuff at least have read some of the major works that are out there. And I always felt like the military sci-fi, stuff out there was a little bit on the shallow side. I don't mean that to be critical. I mean, it's still fun reading sometimes, but it's very rare to find, a military sci-fi book that's got a whole lot of depth to it. And there's a little bit. I mean, you got a couple out there like Starship Troopers,
right.
Over time, so forth, that have some depth. But, by and large, it's, it really doesn't. And so, I got ready to write And also decided that, hey, what would be better than making my own daughter the hero of the character? So, that all the elements started coming together. I'm a sci-fi fan. I was at opening night. I think I mentioned this last time. Opening night at Star Wars 1977 with my dad and my brother. Yep. Way back. I'm right from the get-go wanting to be a Jedi Knight and all that kind of stuff. So, it's been a part of my consciousness, if you will, since I was a kid. So the characters, I'm a little bit about my background, whole special ops thing, Navy stuff, FBI, martial arts has been a huge part of me. And I think that any good writer will tell you that every character that you write is a part of you in some way, right? So, like, for example, the character of General Cattell, he is in a way is both me as a master teaching others as well as masters of my past who have taught me. So, from that point of view, he fulfills that role. And then, so what you do with these characters is, you realize that there are certain characters that need to be, fulfilled in a story. And sometimes you also, when you make a character list, you have to decide which ones to leave out, right? Because when you're, at least for me, and I'm still consider myself, this is my first major work, so it's not like I've got a long history yet of doing this stuff. Some would say I've got some good talent at this point, which I appreciate the comments, but I'm new. I'm really new to that world, so I decided there was a cap on how many characters I wanted all talking and communicating and so forth, because you start doing dialogue, that's why I limited the team to 4 major members, and if you read the book, you'll find out that, the Talon Squad team that I write about, there's only 4 of them, and that's not necessarily because there only would be 4, but there's only 4 I wanted to focus on, because you start doing dialogue of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters, it gets to be a lot for the reader to even follow what the heck's going on, right? So some of that was a kind of like a tactical decision making on when I decided, to do the character list the way I did. Yeah. I don't know if this is helping or not, but that's kind of the genesis of where it comes from. So you got in the main characters, my daughter, as an adult, her master, so to say, was, this General Cattell character. And I've always thought that if you're going to look for life elsewhere, Orion would be a good place to look. And again, that's another show on why I would say that. And I think that's one of the things that's going to make this book unique, to the reader, is that there is on the surface a fun military adventure sci-fi story with a lot of action and a lot of good dialogue and a lot of humor, and things like that. So if you don't even care about the rest, you could still enjoy it for that reason, right? But the layering that I've tried to weave together, to bring this whole story together, I think there's about 5 or 6 layers that I could point out to you that, if we had the time, would make it even more intriguing maybe to the readers or the possible readers out there. But I don't want to give everything away. So I don't know if that helps. Does that help at all on how I kind of...
Yes. I'm intrigued by the genetic aspect of your story, Blood of the Gods, and the hybrid concept that's expressed in it. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, what are your own UFO experiences, if you share?
I had a feeling we're going to go there today. So, well, you know what, my friends and I have that know me well, we actually chatted about this, and we were trying to decide, how much to get into with this, on the air. I would say that I might as well just come out with I'll give you one example of a personal story of mine, and I'll just go ahead and throw it out there, and you can take it for what you will. I believe I saw a craft personally at one time when I was younger. I was about 10 years old. kind of a traditional, saucer type of craft. Was near the house where I grew up in Central Illinois. What had happened that evening was kind of laying around in bed. Like I said, maybe 10 years old. Most everybody was. Like my brother was just, I think he was asleep, and my mom was, on the other side of the house, and I'm just sitting there in my room watching TV or whatever, and I heard this pulsating kind of a humming noise outside the window. So, I get up and look out the window, and bam, that, right there in front of me is this craft. I mean, just hovering, slowly rotating. It couldn't have been more than, I don't know, less than 100 feet. I mean, it was close, and it was right there.
What size?
Yeah, it was real close. So, I just sit and looked at it for about a minute, and, I was slightly mesmerized. It was cool. To me, I mean, I wasn't scared, though. I mean, some people might think you get scared. I wasn't scared. I was just kind of mesmerized and watching it. And I realized about a minute into sitting there that, hey, I need to get a picture of this thing. So my mom happened to be a real estate agent, and back in those days, she had the old school Polaroid, the thing with the actual picture comes out of the thing, right? The old one, I mean, way old school.
Oh, I had two of those in my family. Those were fun.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So I went sprinting through the house to go find her camera that I knew was sitting in the room. So I run in there. I'm like, "Hey, Mom, there's a UFO out there," and she's like, "Yeah, it's probably a helicopter, whatever." I'm like, "No, it's not a helicopter. Where's your camera? I got to get a picture." So I'm stumbling around trying to find it. There's no film ready. I got to, I'm flirting around, going, "Man, I'm gonna miss it." So anyway, push comes to shove, I'm like running out of time. I feel like I'm running out of time.
I mean, how long did this take? I mean, what are the odds that the thing's still going to be there by the time you get back?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that was my thing. Like I was sprinting. Okay, I'm like, I got it. So and this is one of the ways that I know that, I'm not just like dreaming it, right? So I sprint back, trip over the chair in the kitchen, practically fall on my face, get up and run in there, and it was basically gone, but I could see it slightly off in the distance, like, flying away, essentially, right?
Where did you live?
Go ahead.
Where did you?
Oh, I lived in Taylorville, Illinois, so I just put it on the map right there. I haven't told many people that story, but now anybody can listen to it and they'll know. So, I don't think it was a dream, man. I think it was real. I'm not saying who was flying it. I'm not trying to make any judgments on what really was going on there. I have no idea. But I do believe that what I saw was real. And the memory is very clear. It's just like it was yesterday. I've actually over the years made, occasional drawings of it, in discussion with a couple of close friends of mine. And, I would say that it was what you might call a classic scout ship. It was small. It couldn't have been more than maybe 30, 40 feet in diameter. And this is just a guess, 30, 40 feet in diameter, maybe 50. It was hovering, rotating slowly. One thing that I remember for sure was that the color scheme, there was like sort of like these lights that were not, they were not glowing like you would expect. Like you could tell that there was various colors along the edge, but it was almost like it reminded me of a glow rod. Yeah, a glow rod kind of glows.
Yeah.
A lot of light.
Yep.
Right. So like that, and and it had this pulsating noise. I'll never forget. It was. I can't even replicate it. I wouldn't even want to try, to do it myself. But essentially, the noise that it made was not loud. It wasn't like an engine per se, but it was just this kind of like a pulsating energy type noise that it made. And I can still remember it like it was yesterday. So yeah, so I guess you could say that event sealed the deal for me. That was going to become something that was interesting for me, I think. and still is. So that's the only encounter that I have in my memory that I'm sure of where I saw something. But it stuck with me though. So there you have it.
I had a close flyby in flying small engine single engine aircraft over New York in 1990. I was doing a solo flight from MacArthur Airport to Albany and doing one of those 3-point long cross countries. And all of a sudden at about 10:30 in the morning, I'm climbing out at about 1,800 feet near Port Jefferson, New York, in Long Island. And I look to my port side, and I see two objects coming up really fast, climbing up. And I radioed the air traffic controller at MacArthur Airport. MacArthur Tower, I have some traffic on at like 10 o'clock. And he said to me, we don't see them on the radar scope. And I said, monitoring the traffic. And then two eggs. That's the best way that I can describe them. Two egg-shaped craft flying in unison, right past the nose of my aircraft. And this is one of the most perfect sightings I could imagine, because I saw them coming up from below me. I was at 1,800 climbing to 2,200. I saw them below me coming from about, I would say at the earliest point I saw them was 500 feet, and they just came up steadily. And then they accelerated to get by me before I crossed their path. So then I crossed their path and looked at them tail view. So I saw the 3/4 profile front view. I saw the silhouette of the two of them passing in front of me. And then I passed their flight path and looked at them from the tail. And here's the oddest thing. They looked egg-shaped, a long egg shape, horizontally in the profile view, and they looked like eggs in the rear view. It was a very unusual experience, and the thought came to me that if you saw an America's Cup yacht rounded off without the keel and saw the hull attached to another such one without the keel, you'd get an idea of this egg shape that I'm talking about. And there was a very small cupola on top, and it was happening so fast. I had no problem with the engines, no electrical problems, and it seemed like all of us were aware of each other and knew there was nothing to fear. And they actually passed my nose at about 200 feet ahead, and I was doing about 120 closure. So and then they disappeared over Long Island Sound. After they passed me, they accelerated and they crossed Long Island Sound. In about 7 seconds, they disappeared into the haze.
Let's get a little bit more in depth on the book. I know you wanted to give us a little bit more of some of the stuff that that you were thinking about when you wrote the book, and share with the audience, I guess, your thought process as you're writing this thing, and considering the fact that you had your own UFO experience, that obviously played a big part in you deciding to write this book. I mean, that was huge in steering you towards this way, right?
I think so. I mean, I think that I'll allow myself to be slightly mysterious here and say that that encounter that I described was not the only encounter I've ever had completely. It's the only time I've ever seen a craft like that. But I'm not going to go into the full discussion on that tonight. But that's something maybe for a future show to bring in little pieces at a time. So the reason I say that is to really fully get into all the elements that have contributed to the writing of this book. We'd have to get into a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not quite prepared to go into just yet. But maybe one of these days in the future we get into all of it. Just to say I've had an interesting set of life experiences, both professionally and otherwise, that have kind of contributed, to some of the writing here. So, for the listeners out there that may not know much about it, or maybe you were with me last time, but maybe not, tune in, during the time I went through the whole thing about the book. Let me give again the really basic synopsis here. The basic synopsis for the person just wants to check it out. The year is 2047. There is a pending invasion coming from the Orion constellation. And what we have going on is my daughter is now she's 3, in the book she's like 35, 36, has chosen to follow my path in life and is leading a special operations team that is specifically designed to combat this threat. And in the book, what's been going on is that there's this race from the Orion constellation who have been infiltrating the Earth for generations. And there's a small faction of those Orions who are what you might call the good guys, who have essentially chosen to separate from the Emperor and his plans, and in doing so have been part of this resistance. And one of those guys, who I call General Cattell, ends up being her teacher, trainer, mentor, master, whatever, from the time she's about a teenager on through. And so, he's the leader of this group that I call the Masari Order. They're essentially like a warrior group. But, one thing about them is that they, at least the way I like to portray it in the book, is that, they're not, they'll use any tactic or technique or weapon or whatever required to achieve victory. That's kind of one of their baseline premises of how they train their people. So, in other words, it's not quite like a Jedi where, you focus on one specific weapon only as your primary, way of doing combat. Their point of view is you develop all these different skill sets, and whatever you're the best at, you develop that, but you still got to be prepared to use whatever tool is necessary to win. So that's one of the basic premises of the unit. So there's that stuff going on, and that's the surface layer. So, we have this, this race, and they're planning on coming back. The leader of that race, and this is where it starts getting into the really deep stuff, the leader of the Orion people is a former celestial being, what we would call an angel, who gave up that spiritual nature to become mortal. And in doing so, he did not give up his intelligence, intellect, knowledge, or anything else. And it is him and those like him who are the ones who are responsible for things like the pyramids, the creation of space travel prehistory, which I think is arguably something that may have taken place. And again, I'm not saying that I'm exactly right. In the book, I portray these things as though they're facts. And my premise is that, history, the way it's taught in school, is not really accurate. That's one of my basic premises. The obvious example would be something like, the Pharaoh Khufu with 100,000 slaves, built a pyramid with ropes and dragging it through the sand and stuff. These 5 to 20 to 100-ton blocks. No, I just don't believe that. Okay. I think that we're taught that as a specific, deliberate deception to get our minds off of what the truth is. And so, that's where it starts getting pretty deep. But, that's one of the premises in the book. And I kind of cover that in the beginning, and so if you get in there and you want to read it, the reader has to recognize that it is a military sci-fi book. There's a lot of action, but there's also a lot of story building.
The way it kind of sounds like, not to cut you off, Lance, but it almost sounds like, it's story-driven, it is fictional, it's sci-fi, but it's almost like you're inputting really your own personal views on the subject as this is what you believe to be honestly 100% accurate.
No, I'm guilty as charged. Yeah, I absolutely am not. And part of my hope in writing the book, quite honestly, and it was supposed to be a series, by the way, is to open that idea up to people. Obviously, I've been around, various professional types my whole career, and, I think that these topics are considered friends by most folks, but I don't think that they should be. And I think that, a true searcher for truth cannot rule out anything, right? And so I mean, for me, I've always felt like a part of my driving force in life is to search for truth. And so if that means it turns out there's some fringe, crazy stuff out there that's going on, if it's true, it's true. It doesn't matter how fringe it sounds, And so that's been my drive, is to try to find the answers to that. So, what I'm proposing in the book is what you might call a possible solution to the evidence, if that makes sense.
Interesting. And a sci-fi, book, that's an interesting concept. Now, when is the book officially going to be released? Is it already released? Because I know that last time you were here, it hadn't been released yet.
You can get it right now.
Okay.
Any folks out there listening, you can go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com and type my name, Lance Burton, or the title, The Blood of a God, and it should come up. I'm pretty high in the search engine right now, so my book comes up almost immediately when you type it in. You can get hardcover, softcover, or ebook. So for those of you out there that are listening that say, "Hey, this sounds kind of cool. I don't know if I want to spend $20 on it actually it's $18, I think, on Amazon right now. But I'm not sure if I want to spend $18 plus shipping. You can download it on Kindle for $3.99. They made it dirt cheap, so that's your fallback plan there. I mean, it really, and I'm fine with whatever. I mean, I just want people to read it. I want people to get out there and check it out and see what this story is about. And I think that, like I said before, even if you're not into all of the depth of what's going on, because there's a lot of depth, and we'll get into as much of it as you like, to a point tonight. But even if you're not into all that, on the surface layer, it's still a fun military adventure.
It's also a fun sci-fi book. Now, a question: why the Orion constellation? Like, why that constellation out of all the places in the universe?
A great question. I think that there's a few reasons. Okay, number one is that it's figured throughout history as having a direct connection with us through whether it be the monuments like the Pyramid of Giza. It happens to be one of the only constellations mentioned in the Bible. Mm-hmm. The 80s are mentioned as well, but Orion is figured very prominently in Scripture. A lot of people don't know that. Even people that say that they're believers don't know that. So it felt like the obvious choice. And, with all my research I've done over the years, studying all this stuff, you cannot get away from the Orion connection. If you look at the pyramid is the obvious connection. I mean, the pyramids are laid, with the same as the belt, of Orion and, the shafts. If you get in there and you do all the math and you look at it, it points towards, stars of Orion, and as well as Alpha Draconis. And, there's a whole study that can be done that gets into the connection between Orion and these various monuments on the Earth. And, so you have to ask, why is that the case, and of course there's been conjecture after conjecture over the years, but I'm trying to combine, if you will, the various elements
mythologies,
that goes into this, and create, a new, I don't know if I want to call it a new version, but maybe a new possible solution to all the combined evidence, rather than one.
Well, at least a new theory. At least you could call it that. Yeah. Now, real quick here, it says, of course, the descendants of our former angels from the Orion constellation. This is kind of trippy because if we're talking about it, they come from the Orion constellation. They come from a physical place, in physical relative to us, here on Earth. And you're saying they're former angels. Or descending angels, that would mean that really they're extraterrestrials, not so much angels. Or our definition of angels would be completely off, because everybody looks at angels as a mystical, other realm, heavenly body being, not so much flesh and blood from another constellation living on another planet somewhere. You know what I mean?
Well, but I developed this in the book. Okay.
Right.
And I'm for those that maybe haven't heard my explanation of this, and again, not to, I'd love to sit and talk about it for hours, and we almost got into that last time where we, where we got into a very lengthy debate, which I love, which is great. But just briefly, I'm taking for granted that the Bible is true. Now, I'm not saying that you have to agree with me. I'm just saying that for me, as where I am at in my pursuit of truth in my life, I'm taking that for granted. And there are passages in Scripture that many Christians and people that are Bible believers do not know. They are not aware of them. They don't see it, and they haven't taken a hard look at it, and haven't even really thought of it, quite honestly. But there are passages in there, and I'll point out a couple specific that help make my point. Genesis chapter 6 being the first obvious one. There's a reference in there where, and I'm not going to try to quote perfectly because I don't have it sitting in front of me, but I'll give you the paraphrase, the gist of it. There's a passage that says, "The sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and took unto them wives of all of whom they chose." And anyone who's a student of the Bible knows that in the Old Testament, the phrase "the sons of God" is a reference to angels. Okay? And you tie that together with other verses, and again, another great one is in the New Testament, in the book of Jude, right before you get to Revelation in there, where it says, "The angels that kept not their first estate." Now, what he's saying there is, the writer is saying, when he says first estate, what he's saying is the first nature that they originally had. He had that spiritual nature that we are all familiar with, that we think of. So what I'm saying is, my interpretation of that is, and I believe I'm correct, and this is the part where I really think I'm right. I'm not just surmising. I'm saying that there was a time that in history when a no-kidding, real spiritual being gave that up to become mortal so that they could have a relationship with human beings. And in doing so, created hybrid entities, an example of which from history would be like...
Hold on. But there's really no evidence to prove that. I mean, I understand that's his theory, but
that's actually, there's quite a bit. There's quite a bit, believe it or not. I mean, you can find, for example, leg bones of beings that were humanoid that would indicate that. There.
Hold on. Are you talking about like the bones with the elongated skulls?
No, not the elongated skull. There has been archaeological digs that have been done.
By the way, we're having a hard time with your call, Lance. You're breaking up. Your cell phone is really bad connection tonight.
Okay.
Let me do this. Let's drop the call real quick and try to. Can you call back in through a different landline? Because I mean, I really want to continue talking to you, but I mean, it's breaking up really bad.
Let me see if I can find a better spot.
That might help. I don't want the audience to lose what we're talking about here.
Go ahead, Angel,
Robert.
can I inject something in support of Lance's thesis?
Sure.
There is very literal and explicit support for what Lance is saying in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Everyone talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls, but very few people read them. And I'm fortunate enough to have read them in the Hebrew, with the Hebrew on one side and the English translation on the other side. And there is one scroll called the Chariots of Glory. And in this scroll, you will find a description of a special tabernacle, a tent that was set up in the center of the Essene community where Jesus was nurtured and possibly even conceived. Let me tell you this. The tabernacle was devoted as a place where Essene women could have intercourse with angels who came and went to Qumran on chariots of glory. That is
I understand that, and I am familiar with that in the Dead Sea Scrolls. But here's the thing: thousands of years ago, and I actually just had this discussion with Joseph on his show, Universal Talk Radio, a couple of days ago. But like thousands of years ago, any being that would come from outer space on a chariot of fire, which we would call now a UFO, would look like to those people living in that time, that's a mystical thing. So who is not to say that these beings that came down didn't lie to men and tell them, oh yeah, we're angels, we were sent here by God, God sent us. It doesn't mean that's evidence. There's no physical evidence whatsoever to prove that these are actual angels. They were mystical beings sent by God. All it says is that they came down on a chariot and mated with women, right? That could very well be aliens that came down and mated with the women.
Yeah, modern genetics is revealing something really strange.
Hold on. One at a time, guys. Go ahead, Robert.
I was saying that modern genetic studies are now revealing some very strange things. We had many assumptions that have been proven wrong. One of the main assumptions was that Neanderthal man was part of the human lineage. So they saw proto-hominid and so also called the missing link, and then Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and all of us branching off from one line. It's now proven Neanderthal was something else. And in fact, the cross between Neanderthal and the proto-hominid in North Africa and in Siberia is actually what produced the Caucasian race. This is a very delicate subject that genetics and geneticists are dancing around because the implications are staggering. The Caucasian race spun off because of a cross between an antecedent anthropoid proto-human with Neanderthal. And there is another strain of human that devolved from woman X, Denisova hominid. They found a finger in Siberia that had enough DNA to analyze it. And when they analyzed it, they found that the being that was conceived and had that DNA descended from another matrilineal line. Woman X is considered not to have been exactly what we call human. And this line of human beings spread out in Asia and then died out, except one strain still survives on this planet, and that is the Micronesian people. The Micronesian people have a genetic marker that links them to the mother, the mitochondrial DNA links them to woman X and not to Lucy or any of these other African Genesis or Eve, you know.
But hold on, wait a minute. We're still all genetically compatible for interbreeding, even though there wasn't any. There's the split off or the.
Well, here's the thing. Homo erectus. Here's the thing. Hold on. Homo erectus and Neanderthal man might have lived next to each other side by side, but at some point the dominant of the two is the one that took over, and that would be Homo erectus, and then Neanderthal man faded away. I mean, that's just, basic evolution at that point, really. I mean, but look, our DNA does have a lot of genetic mistakes and glitches and all kinds of errors they found when they decoded the human genome. A lot of that could be, it could be said that maybe we were tampered with at some point. But again, if we're tampered with genetically, it doesn't exactly mean that there's an angel from some kind of constellation who is descendant from the heavens who did it. It could very easily be an alien mistaken as an angel.
I want to make sure the listeners don't mistake what I'm saying. Okay, what I'm saying is that these beings, and again, like I said, for now, without getting into the why question, I'm taking for granted that the Bible is right. Okay, now I know that that's not going to be the case for many listeners, and that's fine. I'm saying that I'm arguing that it's correct. Okay, so that being the case, what I'm saying is that these angels that gave up their spiritual nature to become mortal did so here first. Okay, and then what happens, and this is when you read the book, you'll know. Like, I actually spell this out in the first few chapters, what goes on. But ultimately, what I argue is that they some of them left the earth by building the first known starships. Okay? So, and there's a connection. They were involved with building the pyramids. They were involved with building these starships. And they actually left the earth. So in the book, what we have is this guy who I call Emperor Caden. And he was one of the first angels that gave up his spiritual nature to become mortal. And was essentially a sort of mythical hero figure in history. And actually, in the book, I had a little bit of fun and painted him as what would have been Perseus and from Greek mythology. And then ultimately, he chooses, for reasons that I don't get completely into. I get into it a little bit, but not completely. Chooses to leave the Earth, and he does so by commissioning the building of a starship. So when they left, they went to Orion. Now, let me ask you a question. And this is all for fun, right? We're just talking it through.
Right.
If you really were one of these guys, right? I mean, if you had this power, this knowledge, this intellect, and even though you had given up some of that to become mortal, I mean, what do you think about possibility of how big your ego is going to be, right?
Oh,
so pretty big, right? So in the book, what I'm arguing is that he basically thinks, hey, you know, I need to be running the earth. What is with these, you know, humans and stuff thinking I ought to be running things? I ought to be running things. So in the book, prepares to come back and take over. And what he does is
So this is like Lucifer, in other words, the storyline. It almost sounds like a Lucifer.
Well, actually, hang on. That's in there, but it's not him. Okay. This guy is a different being. Okay. And this one I'm using is just one I created based using the concept. Okay. So, you know, but it's not Lucifer, although he is figured in the book in one very small way, and you know, the reader will get a small glimpse of that in the book. I don't get into it a whole lot. I mean, there's only like a couple of chapters where it's even dealt with. Okay, but anyway, so this Caden character who's running the Orion people, you know, he takes them over to he goes to Orion. And ultimately decides that, hey, the time has come for me to come back and rule the earth. I deserve it, right? And so what he does is he sends an expeditionary force to help prepare Earth for his coming back, okay? And that is what the good guys, if you will, are preparing to fight against. So that's kind of what's going on without getting into every last detail, okay, and boring everyone to tears on how I got to that point. But that's the concept. So it wasn't that I said that he started in Orion and came here. It's that he started here, went there, and wants to come back and take over.
Right.
So there you have it.
Interesting.
Plausible to me.
Yeah. I mean, as a sci-fi story, it's definitely a very good storyline.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I agree with Lance that the Bible is fundamentally right, but I believe the information is encoded and in symbol, and if you have the key, you can decipher it. You know, getting down to the, Jesus said that everything in our nature is numbered down to the number of hairs on our head. And I think that that's a pretty good description of a DNA code, the uniqueness of the DNA code that each of us possesses.
Well, the fact of the matter is, you know, when Crick and Watson, you know, figured out the double helix and all that, you know, back in the 50s, and then as the studies continued, and they realized something that's major that a lot of people don't know, and that is that DNA is a digital code. And for those out there that are tech folks, something being digital, you can't have digital anything without information present that is based on a language.
Right.
Right?
There's also the 97% junk DNA that's really not junk.
Exactly.
You know,
so there's
but there's an infinite potential in that.
Evidence.
That reflects it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, my thing with the whole DNA thing, I agree. DNA definitely is a set of codes that evolves through time and fixes whatever glitches the species might have, so it can evolve with the surrounding area that it's in, which explains how evolution happens. It's a natural process of the planet. But let's go back to talking about the angels, for example. Let's go back and talk about the mythology here that you're saying that you really do believe that the Bible is it's 100% accurate on. Because again, I go back to the Nephilim, the giants, and some of the stuff that is in the Bible. As much as we'd love to believe that a lot of the stuff is true and is written because because it's like a historical record. How do you explain the rewrites throughout history on the Bible and all the different versions and different storylines and different this and different that, but more importantly, the rewrites throughout the history of the last 1,000 years. Because I mean, look, if God's word is law, why does He keep Why does he keep changing his mind?
Well, he doesn't. And that's the great question.
Exactly. Man is changing it.
Here's the thing, okay? And this to answer that question requires about 120 hours of study, okay? But to give you the synopsis, what you have, in my opinion, based on my own personal studies, is you have to study what's called manuscript evidence, okay? When you study manuscript evidence, what you find is that there is a chain of texts that are uncorrupted, or incorrupted, I guess would be the right way to say it, right?
Well, that would be the Old Testament, except for the stuff that was taken out as the Apocrypha. Would that be correct?
Yes. So you have the Apocrypha and that's one of those things that is contested depending on which side of the Christian worldview you land in, right?
Right.
But what you have is, and this is a great question, but this is something to fully develop is going to take a lot of time. So I'm going to try to just really hit it. Ultimately, what you have, in my opinion, is two chains of manuscripts. Okay, you have a chain that begins with the Masoretic text that comes through with the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic, and then there's a point in time when you have a gentleman by the name of Origen, somewhere around the time of like 180 something AD, right in there, and this guy decides that the scripture isn't really supposed to be taken literal; it's supposed to be figurative and allegorical. So what he begins to do is he is one of the first guys that begins doing those rewrites that you're talking about. Okay. So there were other people, though, that recognized that that's not correct, that is not the right way to do it, and they were a part of preserving the chain. And so if you get into this study, it takes a long time to follow this thing all the way to its conclusion. But what I believe has happened is that there has been the preservation of one chain all the way through, and it culminates in the 1611 King James Version when the English language is at its apex, okay? And that being the crowning achievement of scriptural translation in the English language, okay? So from there, you have to ask the question, and you're right, it's a legitimate question. Why all the changes? I mean, shoot, man. I mean, since then, there's been how many American versions are there? Like 50, 100, different ones. Well, my answer as a believer is that the devil wants to mess everybody up. That's why. Because that's kind of a cop-out answer. I mean, to blame the devil, that's like, we don't have an explanation, so let's just blame the devil. That doesn't really fly with me, because I don't believe in the devil, personally. Well,
I
don't
think there's such a thing.
But I'm telling you.
No, I understand, but still, like, for the regular audience who's listening in, a lot of them are going to be like, well, that's kind of an easy way out. Just blame the devil,
Well, but you know what? We don't have time to develop it, so I'm hitting the highlight. So let me give an example.
May I say something? If we're dealing with an extraterrestrial or alien entity that is anti-human in its outlook, that is seeking only to exploit us and or the planet, then I think the word devil, in the context of something that's anti-human and anti-human life, is a good enough symbol. And, of course, it was created for simple-minded people who needed an easy tool to describe good and evil. What is good? Good is something that promotes the well-being of mankind. For me, what is evil? Evil is anything that degenerates or works against the survival of mankind. For me, and the devil lived and devil backwards.
Lived and deviled.
kind of.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a reversal of the word lived. L-I-V-E-D.
Yep.
Yeah. So the opposite of lived is devil. Something anti-human, anti-life.
Yeah, but that's only in English, not any other language.
Yeah.
Diablo. Yeah. True.
Doesn't work in Spanish.
Let me give you one.
But you know what, friends? I like to remind what the King of Spain found out after the sinking of the Spanish Armada. He had to admit that God thinks in English, and I believe that too.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole other topic, right? But here's what I'd like to just mention for the listener. Okay, this is something that's worthy of research. Okay, and there's various guys out there that are their knowledge level is on the extreme level of this thing. They put a bunch of books out. One of them I mentioned last time we were on, Dr. Peter Buckman, controversial figure in the Christian world, but as far as I'm concerned, is right on the mark when it comes to this stuff. He's got one of the best videos you're ever going to find on this topic. It's just called simply Basic Manuscript Evidence. You can get it from his store, KGV1611.org. You can just go on there, and if someone who really wants to listen to it, they can listen to it. And he walks you through in an hour and 15 minutes what it takes 120 hours to teach. And I'm not kidding. It takes a long time to sort of get through all this stuff. So that's why just making a comment and saying, oh well, it's a cop-out. It's not that I'm trying to make a cop-out. It's just a very very detailed topic, to explain all the different versions, all the different manuscripts, and all the different stuff that's going on. I mean, it's a complicated topic, and I'll give one example of this, the fallout of this, okay? For those out there that maybe know a little bit about the Old Testament, the book of Daniel is considered to be a highly prophetical book. There's a story in there that many of us may or may not know, whether you came up listening to this kind of stuff or learned about it as an adult, where the king Nebuchadnezzar has a rule essentially in his land where you're going to worship him and you're going to worship his idols, and that's it. Okay, and there's three Jewish guys who are renamed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and ultimately they choose to follow their own path and refuse to worship the idols that he set up. So what he does, he says, okay, well, that's where you're going to be, then you're dead, right? So he creates this fire that he's going to throw them in this fire pit, okay, kind of like almost like a Mesoamerican type pyramid type structure is the way it's kind of usually described. So he stokes the fire up real hot and gets these guys all bound up in some ropes, takes them to the top of the pyramid, throws them out. Okay? All right. In the Bible, you have it tells you what happens. And what happens is, in the King James, it says, and again, I'm paraphrasing, and I saw four, and the fourth was like unto the Son of God, capital S, capital G. And so what he's saying is that there is somehow they were protected by divine power, and he saw a fourth being, even though there were still only three thrown in the fire. And what most Christians or Bible students would say that is what you call a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. So he got him out of this. He saved them from the fire, essentially. Okay. So, but if you pick up an NIV, New International Version, and you go read the same passage, what it says is something completely different. What it says is that the fourth is like unto a son of the gods, plural, small s, small g. Now, that stuff makes a difference in language, right? We use capitals and we use proper nouns and proper terms for reasons. So when you change it from it's like unto the Son of God, which is obviously now having the New Testament as the reference to Jesus, if you change that to a son of the gods, that is obviously trying to remove that, right? So what you have to ask is why would they do that? Well, as it turns out, the head of the New International Version Committee wasn't even a Christian. So, what does that say? Well, is that the right rendering? Well, I don't think it is for a whole bunch of reasons we don't have time to get into. But, you have to ask, for me, when I started digging into this stuff, you have to ask the question, what was so unclear about it? Because the argument that these people make when they do these updated versions is they're trying to clarify it for modern readers, right? Mm-hmm. So what is clearer about saying a son of the gods versus the son, like the Son of God? That there's no clarity necessary there. It is what it is. It doesn't make it easier to understand. There's no, all you've done is completely change the meaning.
Right.
So anyway, that happens in a lot of places. So we're talking like hundreds and maybe even thousands of cases of that kind. And when you start digging into this, you have to start digging into the motives. Okay? Now, I'll leave it with that because, like I said, this is a very lengthy topic we don't have time for. But
we might have to have you come back for a part 3.
Yeah, man, we got to do it because there's so much to get into on this stuff.
Unfortunately, we're all out of time here. We got about a minute and a half left. Quick, let's give the audience again your website so they can go and check out the book and purchase the book. Everybody, please! It really looks like a fantastic read. If you're into sci-fi, you're going to love this book.
I'll tell you this: I've had a lot of readers already write me emails. Everyone so far loves it, and which of course I'm very happy about that. I would recommend right now, go to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, look up my name, Lance Burton, or the name of the book, The Blood of God. You can order it paperback, hardback, or Kindle, either way. Our website is bloodofthegod.com. It is being redone, currently being redone. It should be, the new version of the website should be live in about a week. So right in there, we had kind of a placeholder website to kind of just have a basic overview of what's going on before we kind of ramped it up and got a little bit more of a full website completed. But I'd love for people to go on and check it out. You can go, there's a fan page on Facebook. You can look me up on Facebook and friend me. I love getting messages and talking to folks about it if they're interested, so don't hesitate to drop me a note and check it out.
Very cool. Lance, we're definitely going to book you back on and have a 3-part on this.
That sounds great, man.
It's a lot of fun having you on the show, even though we do get a little bit heavy in the whole religious debate and stuff.
I know, we do.
A lot of fun.
Every time.
Next time when you come back, instead of just talking about the sci-fi elements of the book, let's just jump right into some of the religious aspects of your beliefs and what we believe, and hopefully the audience could give us a few calls and share their thoughts on what we're talking about and stuff. Yeah. But we are all out of time here. We got to wrap up. Unfortunately, it's been another exciting technical glitch-filled episode here on Skywatchers Radio. Actually, it's the first time in many, many months that we've had any technical issues whatsoever, so I'm happy about that at least. Hopefully we won't have any next week when we come back and have another fantastic show for you folks. Stick around tomorrow, by the way, right at this same exact time, 1 a.m. Eastern. The Rich Giordano Show is going to debut on Dark Matter Radio Network and on PSN Radio, so anybody who's listening in and heard that show we had with Rich a couple weeks ago, you'll definitely want to listen to his show when it starts up tomorrow night. So again, check out Rich's show tomorrow, the AZ UFO Show, and we're going to be back next week right here on Skywatchers Radio with another fascinating guest. It just keeps getting better and better every single week. Next week, Jason Martell's going to be with us. So guys, stick around for more Dark Matter Radio shows and PSN shows, and we'll catch you next week right here on Skywatchers Radio. Good night, everybody. Alan, Robert, Lance, it's been fun.
Absolutely, yes. Very much.
Talking to everybody else, too. It's good meeting you through the phone.
Talk to you guys next week.